Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to get the engine mounts out of this and also the subframe mounts and replace them with new ones. I did mention in the latest video regarding this car that you know, the engine mounts that I had used before, I used I think they're Euro mounts, and before I knew any better they were fitted some years ago, probably only about 6-7 years ago now, and they failed and the engine's sinking down slightly or more than it should. And obviously, as you know, the subframe mounts need replacing. So what my plan is to lower the subframe to gain access to the towers, to remove those, and at the same time gain access to the engine mount, so we can see if we can do all four at once. So let's get you down here on this side. I won't film this side, it's a little more awkward this side, but we'll do mainly filming on this side and it's just repeated on the other. So let's get to it. Okay, first things first, we've got to disconnect the tie rod from both sides, obviously the steering tie rod from the knuckle assembly here, and then we're going to take off the brake hose because this is going to be lowered. I'm not sure whether I'm going to take it off this end or this end, and I'll clean before I disconnect that. Obviously the system's going to need re-bleeding afterward. So let's get this undone. We're going to use one of these guys to separate the knuckle here. Alright. Well, first thing I've noticed, this should have a split pin going through here, and it doesn't appear to have one. So that obviously is something that got overlooked, and I'm not sure why that doesn't have that. I would have replaced that obviously, so obviously we've got to replace that. So let me undo this castle nut here, 17mm. Now, I got one of these because you can use a pickling fork, but that will end up damaging the seal, and hopefully this won't, but if you do, you should really replace this anyway. That was certainly in there, wasn't it? I think if you don't have one of these things, these aren't particularly expensive. You can check the boot here. It looks to be in good shape, but you can heat this up. You've got to be careful you don't melt the boot. Yeah, boot's in good shape, so that's good. So that disconnects that guy. So I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll come back and we'll do the brake hose. Just for reference, this splitter thing here, this separator, I made a mistake what I showed you. I feel that I shouldn't have put this against the end of the tie rod. So on the other side, what I did, I loosened the tie rod nut off, so there was definitely, you know, it was loose and everything, but then pressed this arm against the top of the castle, so no risk of damaging the thread. So that was my mistake, so just do that. Don't listen to me. So yeah, put a castle nut on there so it protects it, and then also it doesn't go boing and fly all over the place. It just stops there. Excuse my neighbour, he's mowing the lawn today. So I'm undoing this little bolt at the back here and enable this bracket to come free, and then I can break this flexible line loose. Alright, just so you can see, obviously that's fluid leaking out. I'm undoing the hard line above, and I undid the bracket that is the holder. See, there's this little plate that goes up here and then bolts through into this bracket to hold it. So having to undo this so I can relieve this hose here. May well replace these hoses just while we're in here anyway. So did these probably about 8 years ago when I got the car, maybe 8 years ago, but maybe I'll just throw some on there, not that expensive, while we're in here. I forgot to mention we've got to detach the sway bar and the forward leaf spring type thing that's attached to the body. We'll get those and I'll show you on this side, and it's repeated on that side. Here we go, under here. So we're gonna obviously take this sway bar off, detach it from here, and then I can replace the kit and what have you. And then this leaf spring assembly, detach that as well. And you know, disconnect it here and pull it out from underneath this sway bar plate. Probably disconnect the handbrake cable, because obviously that's going to get interrupted when we lower the subframe. Engine we're going to keep much in the same position. It might flex a little bit, so that's okay. We don't need to detach any other lines or anything, because that will flex with it. Essentially that will stay in the same position, obviously raised just a smidge because of the new engine mounts. Okay, let me undo these guys. Okay, just for reference, you don't have to worry about this sway bar doing anything to you when you undo it. So it's 22 mil bolts here, or nuts I should say, 24 mil on this leaf spring assembly here. So we'll detach it all at one time, and then I'll detach all this business as well. This I think is a 13 mil deep socket up here that we'll take this off and then detach it all from here. It's all pretty straightforward. So I've detached all of the bushings here, and this rod that just came out, that enabled me to move the sway bar enough to be able to pull the bolt out of here. Okay, and this will probably just lever out of there, but obviously I'm leaving a nut here so this doesn't all collapse down, so I'm doing this at the other end as well. So then once all that's out, you can take the nut out and then remove the whole sway bar and then pull these leaf springs out. Alright, so here's the sway bar removed. It's all very, very straightforward actually. You haven't got to worry anything about anything springing and smacking you in the face or anything like that. This obviously just comes into action when the car does sway from side to side. Then it creates a sort of a torsion effect to keep the car not swaying all over the place. So anyway, so we've got a 24 mil on nuts bolt assembly that go through here, pretty straightforward, little on the tight side. Then we've got this plate, the shim plate that goes between here. This joins all like that, and these are, what are they, 22? I think these are 22s, but they all undo pretty straightforward. Same with that end, as you can see, this one's covered in muck from that leaking steering pump, so there's a lot of cleanup to do. Bushings actually look extremely good. That's not a split, that's a split because they come in, you know, like a wrap, so they wrap around the bar. These feel extremely fairly new actually, and so do these ones. They don't look damaged or have any problem at all. I will replace the bushings on those towers that go, because they do seem a little on the crack side, but someone's been here and done these before not too long ago. Anyway, so let me get under again and just review. So we're going to undo the cable, which is a little split pin for the handbrake. That's not a big deal. Next, obviously disconnect the shock as well from the top. Still undo the bits at this side, the steering knuckle, brake hose and all that. I'll get this piece out. I want to get this out and show you the order of assembly on this guy. So let me do that. Alright, I actually had to cut the passenger one off. Yeah, I just had to slice it off because it had seized on there. So anyway, but this is the bottom, obviously. This goes through. There's a bushing that sandwiches right at the bottom here. And then this cap goes over, okay, then this sleeve goes over, then this guy, let me get that in there, holding camera at the same time, yeah, so that guy goes in, and this is the one that goes into the sway bar, this bit, alright, and then this sandwiches that, so the sway bar's in between there, and then it's capped, and then your nut. Okay, it's pretty straightforward, and these bushings are the things that go dodgy over years, so these don't look horrendous, but I will change them out. I've got a new set of this actually for the 6.3 I bought ages ago, so I'll have to buy more for that when I get that all ready. Alright, one more thing we got to detach is this stabilizer for the rear of the subframe. Attaches to this arm. Okay, so we detach that. Don't have to detach the shock, so just detach that. It's a 19 mil nut and bolt here. Word of caution when you're undoing the brake line, be very careful with the metal brake line, because you wouldn't want to have to replace that, because that travels all the way along the bulkhead behind the engine, and that'd be a right pain if you broke that. So I introduced a little bit of heat on this one. It was a little bit stubborn, so it loosened up pretty good, and so a little heat
helps, and obviously don't damage your bodywork. But anyway, there you go.
I've taken the shock, undone the shock from the other side. Small top here which you can put a wrench on to stop it spinning, but once it starts spinning it's okay. Now I can get a 17mm deep socket on it and just undo that top nut. And what we got to do then is figure out a way of supporting the motor in basically the same position it's in. There is a tool to be used in the manual where they have it kind of goes right across the top here and supports the engine. I could use my engine crane, but to be honest, I don't want to pull all that out and deal with that right now. So I'll leave that up there. So that's detached the shock. So let's get underneath and see how we're going to support the motor. Okay, next thing, as I say, is to support the engine. Now the body is supported with those two axle stands underneath the subframes inward of the rocker slightly, you know the ones. So there, the main body is supported, okay, with the engine and everything hanging off. So now we've got to isolate the engine so it stays essentially in line with the body. And so what I've come up with, this is 2 pieces of 1/8 inch angle iron to make up to 1/4 inch. Okay, this will form a bridge. I'm going to support that with 2 axle stands like that, a piece of wood here on the pan of the engine to spread the load so we don't do any damage. And then the bridge is for, so I can bring my jack in, lift it up to the, just give it a little bit of tension, but not so much it lifts it off of the axle stands under the body. So give it a little tension, raise the axle stands here and here, and then lower it, and then essentially that's the engine isolated. So then we can pull the subframe down and leave the engine in place. That's the idea anyway. Okay, so let's put these in place and I'll show you. I'll get them fitted and then I'll bring the camera down. So now we've got the bridge here. The jack stands are distant apart to be able to get the jack underneath, and this is, like I say, essentially 1/4 inch angle iron with a thick piece of maple there to spread the load. And because it's angle iron, it will find its own kind of sweet spot on the arms of the jack stand. So now we're isolated, got the engine supported. Back there we've got the body, and essentially now we can start to put a support underneath the subframe, and then we can essentially lower the subframe to be able to gain access to the mounts and consequently the engine mounts as well. Right, so now, as I say, the engine is supported under the car now, and we're not going to disconnect the subframe obviously because that needs to be supported before we do that, but we can undo the engine mounts because the engine's essentially frozen there, but it needs detaching from the subframe. So what I'm going to do first is take the nuts off of the heat shield there. It will give me better access. You can possibly see the socket I have on down there, right in the distance there. That's a 19mm socket on top of the engine mount bolt. So I've got a really long extension to get the, I've already loosened it, the heat shield now. Some of you might have trouble with this. The heat or PB blaster would, whoops, drop the bolt here. PB blaster's your friend on something like this, and just let, you know, that's something maybe you want to let soak for a few days or something before you even start. So let me get this. I'll do this obviously on both sides. Oh, by the way, obviously I've removed the battery tray on the other side. I think I've already talked about that, but let's get this guy out of there. Give me better access. Right, so there you can see. There you go, there's the socket there. It should give me better access. And then the heat shield on top of that as well, see it? On top of the mount. And we'll see if I can get it from here. I'm obviously not going to be able to hold the camera, but I'll see what wrench I can get on that, and then relieve the Allen bolts on the frame underneath. This tool works pretty good, see? You can get a long bar in there, and it's articulated at the bottom, so it acts like a you know, one of those universal joint socket things. So yeah, that's the one to use, isn't it? Right, it's a little in shadow here, but I've taken the bolt and the heat shield off, but there's also a bracket that sandwiches onto the arm that's on the block, okay, to the engine shock absorber. So I'll just undo the shock and then get that off, and then I'll show you. Okay, so you can see the engine mount just here. This is the engine mount. I've got a 6mm Allen, I think it's a 6 Allen on there, pretty accessible. And I'll access the other one on the other side, only 2 of them. And we'll have a look on the other side. If there's any major difference, I'll let you know. As far as access, the shock absorber thing wrapped around the arm that's attached to the block that's this way, okay? I'll show you that in a sec. So just got to undo that, get that Allen out, and probably my swivel head ratchet on there will do a good job. Yeah, the swivel head seems to work just fine. Just they shouldn't be too tight. I mean, if they're tight or they've been messed up with by the previous person, then you've certainly got issues there. And hopefully we won't run into it, because the previous person was me. And if we do have a problem, you can blame me. So it's just a little Allen bolt there, see? And I'm going to get the other one off the back side and then move over to the other side. Now at this point, if you were just doing engine mounts, right, then you could essentially lift the engine slightly, slide your new mount in. Well, actually slightly, it's probably an inch or two. These are really naffed. So at this point, then it's just an engine mount switch, and then the reverse of everything else, and you probably wouldn't have to take any of the sway bar off and all that to gain access. But if you're going the full hog and doing the subframe mounts as well, which I'm sure a lot of you probably want to do that anyway, because why not while you're in here, along with all the other relative bushings and stuff. So anyway, let me get that back one off. I used a long extension at the top here to get the back one. That seemed to work well. You might have some debris and stuff in there. Make sure you clean that out first, so the Allen socket essentially bottoms out properly in the Allen bolt and doesn't just ride on the top and then burr it over and create problems. So anyway, so let me show you. This arm is the part that essentially goes over the engine mount arm that goes onto the block, okay, and then the main bolt goes through that. This is the shock absorber that is completely not working anymore on there. So you can see that's about as effective as a cat flap in an elephant house, as they say. So we'll obviously have to replace that guy, clean it up a bit, clean the brackets up. So that's that. And then over here, this is I think this was a URO mount. Lasted about, I'm thinking I did that in around 2016, 2015. So they just don't last. It's just not worth it. So this is a Lemforder one I bought from one of the administration over on the 108, 109 club or Facebook group on Facebook. So thanks a lot for those. So I'll be putting those on. So what I've found with the passenger side, zoom in there, is that I can get my flex head box wrench ratchet on there, 19mm, and it's a little tighter, but you can make it, it's not too bad really. So that one, and I've approached it from the rear, okay, so it's a little tricky to come from above because the exhaust manifold's in the way. I did take the shield off, but I think you're better off just coming from underneath on the passenger side. Let me get the wrench out of the way. We've got loose enough we can undo the bolt now. Oh, you can see there's another shock absorber engine shot this side. I'll check that, because if one's gone I'm sure the other's shot. So 4.5 has 2 of them. Okay, so we got the bolt out. get the shield out. That's the heat shield. And we'll be able to access the Allens pretty easy. Probably the front one this time from above and the rear one from below here. So let me get those. Right, there you go. See the Allen hidden down right down there? I can't even point to it. Let me get some in. There you see the Allen, and see you get debris here, so you've got to make sure you clean those out before you attempt to undo them, because otherwise you could risk rounding them off. So this is the front passenger side one, and the other one is the opposite, diagonally opposite. So both engine mounts came out pretty easily actually. The Allen bolts, I think I oiled them before I put them in before, put an anti-seize on them, and that helped a lot. And I do believe I put new ones in back then, so replace those, and you don't have to over tighten, don't have to go mad, put lock washers on or something. It will help you in the future, or the next person that changes them out. So that's the engine mounts out. So let's have a little review. This tool with this articulating head here, this was really helpful because it swivels like a universal joint. It's pivoted here, and it's a nice long T-handle. That helped a great deal for reaching down. Really handy little tool. So that's my tool recommendation on this one. So next thing, so now the engine is just supported by steel bar setup underneath and the rear transmission mount. Now it's just sitting there, so it's anchored, no problem. Now next job is to lower the subframe, remove our support plates, or support the subframe first obviously with a jack, and then we can remove these and then just gently lower the subframe to the point where it exposes those subframe mounts, and switch those out, and we'll get our other engine shock absorber off this side, the passenger side. Check that, that's probably knackered as well. So as I say, now we've got the engine supported, we've got the engine mounts out. Now we can bring our jack underneath the subframe and then lower the subframe. Now I'm not going to do this all together. What I think I'm going to do is retract back one of our nuts. I'll show you that in a second, of our support plates. Essentially the subframe is hanging from those support plates now, nothing else is holding it. So what I can do is do a kind of controlled drop. On one side have the jack in the middle, and then bring this all the way to the lowest point, and then this one we can actually remove this one. And what I'm thinking, I've got enough space to lower the subframe like this, put the mount in, bring it back up, and then do the other side. So let me get in close and I'll show you what I mean. So here's our support plate on both sides, one on each side. And what I'm going to do, this bolt obviously goes through to the subframe itself, right through the subframe mount into the subframe. And what I'll do is I'll back this nut off so it rides up this thread, okay, and essentially lowers the subframe on each side. And obviously we're supporting in the middle of the subframe, but because the subframe shape is it could start teeter-tottering and stuff like that. So I figure if I held it on one side, it should keep it in control. So let's get the jack set up. So what I'll do, I'll take this one completely out, and then on the other side we're going to back this nut off. Right now we have the subframe supported. Let me get my socket. Take our support plate out. Then I'm going to undo these 4 bolts at the top here so we can access this, pull this subframe out. Again, we've got everything supported with the jack, and also on the other side as well. So let me get these bolts out. 14s those are. There we go. This is completely detached from the car now. Let's go and back that other nut off on the other side, back this one up, and so it raises to here, so it lowers that end, that side as much as possible. And that we're using a 19 crow's foot. Now I guess some people, if they had the proper attachment, they could take this one off as well and lower the whole thing, but I'm doing this, you know, just as a for someone that is a little unsure and they don't want to deal with both sides at the same time. So this I'm going to undo, because we're still supported obviously by the jack. You see, this is still bolted into the subframe. Okay, so this will give us that much play, okay, to play with, but we know that this side's not going to get away from us, so to speak. So let's get that jack lowered, lower the subframe with the jack. I'll see if I can set up the camera for you. So here we are under the driver's side here. So subframe's up inside this cup here, okay, so it's tucked right up there, and so we're going to have to drop this subframe low enough to pull that mount out. So we've got approximately about 2 inches from this ridge to the top of this tower here. So I'm going to leave the camera set up on the tripod. You're watching this area here. This in relation to this, I'm going to start lowering ourselves with the jack. It might get stuck a little bit because the shock has to come through the bushings, but let's see how we do. Just a little bit at a time. Stay controlled. Let's lock it there. Let's have a look what we're looking at. Oh, there you can see our mount is right here. That's why it kind of stuck in there. Might have to lever that out because obviously it's been in forever and a day. Actually, let me go a little lower. Oh, that's really see, I destroyed that mount. Look at that. There we go, I think it's coming. Just see now, what I want to show you. This, okay, so that's what I was talking about. See, that mount's just come apart. I have to get that other bit out of there, but you can see that all that stress, you know, hanging these front ends, the engine and everything hanging on these subframe mounts. Admittedly, there are other things connecting them, but you can see what stress they're put under, and that's why I think the locking plates are a good idea. So let me get that. I'm going to have to hit that with hammer to break it. I'm not hitting the actual subframe, just the lower part of the mount, so I'm not damaging anything. There you go. That was easy enough. So let me show you. So there's the lower section. Now what I'm going to do is take some measurements and show you how much the subframe has to drop to be able to work your new one in there. So let me go and get a new one. Alright, here's the new subframe mount. It's actually one I bought for the 6.3 project, but they're all the same, so I have to buy some new ones for that. That's a long ways away, so we'll just use these today. Nice new bolt, washer setup, and let's see what we can do as far as getting this in there, and I'll take measurements for you guys. Right, now the measurement, let's see, out the bolt. Let's take the bolt out in a minute. See, we can get this in quite easily. I say quite easily. Might have to come down. Oh no, there we go. See, you can get that subframe mount in there, right? And let's see how much we had to drop. So from this top spot weld frame area to the top of the tower, not the rim, but the tower, you're gonna have to drop it. Looks like 4 3/8 by the looks of it, from here to here. So that gives you an idea of what you're talking about, what you need to drop by. So let's get this guy bolted up here loosely, and then we'll locate. We're not going to put the main bolt back in yet because I still want a bit of playroom. And once we're set on the other side, then we'll put the new bolt in and tighten everything up. So we'll just do these 4 bolts up, okay, and then we'll put our support plate back through so that we can keep the subframe low, so we can do the other side. And in actual fact, what I'm going to do is not put the new center bolts in until we've got everything else anchored. Even the car can go back on the ground, then we can put the final bolts in. So anyway, so let me get these bolted on and we'll do the other side. Alright, so now we've got that all bolted in, we'll raise the subframe, put our support plate back in, okay, at its lowest point, so we've got plenty of wiggle room. Let's go and do the other side. Let's have a look at the other side. So you can see now that bolt's bottomed out, but it's still hanging onto the subframe. So anyway, this is in the other room. This is the 6.3 front subframe. On the 6.3 they have this spacer plate that goes between the body and the top of the mount. It's about 3/4 inch. It effectively lowers the whole engine just by 3/4 of an inch to give enough room under the engine hood, so because of the larger size of the 6.3. so just a little point of interest. So there's the mount. You can see the subframes kind of move around quite easily on the jack. So we'll jack this up so it goes into the cup. I'm actually using the camera's viewfinder, pointing that to the front of the car so I can see. See, now we're intersected now. Press that right in there, and then we'll put up the support plate back. There we go, put that back in. Now let's go and do exactly the same on the other side. Right, okay, this is the passenger side. I'm going to let the jack down slowly to reveal that mount. So, that one, see, it's completely torn, completely severed mount. There we go, I've locked it on the jack now. And we just got to undo the 4 bolts to the top and get that guy out. Here's the top view here, so completely separated from the upper part of the mount. As you can see, there's quite a bit of surface rust here. I'm not going to show you in this video, but I'm going to do a bunch of tidy up in this engine bay where the battery acid had been spilling, and maybe reprime and move some of these wires and tidy it up a bit because it's looking a bit sorry for itself. So let's undo these bolts. Well, I've got them loosened already, and we'll get this mount out and replaced. As you can see, this is the passenger side one. You see all that rust in there, see that? That was from that rusty bolt that we've discovered. So yeah, that definitely needed doing, didn't it? Should ride a lot nicer now. So there we are, new mount installed, and we're going to just gently raise the subframe up to meet that guy. Kind of finds itself there. Alright, we've got taking the weight. Let's get that bolted off, and then we'll basically reverse everything. Well, I think that's going to be about it for today. We've got the subframe mounts back on. All it is a reversal of everything else. We're going to put I put the engine mount on this side already. Once you position this in and get enough room in there, is when you put the Allen bolts back in there. I put a little bit of anti-seize lubricant, made sure the Allen is really thoroughly cleaned out. I ended up reusing my old ones because they were in great shape. So just make sure they're not damaged in any way. Put a little lubricant on them, and don't cinch them down altogether. I just put them in a couple of turns so that the mount was still movable, and then brought in the heat shield and then the bolt, and I was able to, the subframe's fairly loose, so able to move it around, jiggle it, but it took a little bit of a hassle, but you could finally get a couple of turns on the main bolt, cinch that down, and then you can fully tighten these. Don't over tighten them. These Lemforder mounts, they are marked red on both sides, so they're hardened engine mounts on both sides, which I think was the case on the 113 as well, but correct me if I'm wrong. Also, I have on order from, I think, Moller in Germany, a couple of new engine shock absorbers. They're not here yet, so I can't really show you much about those, but that will also stop the motor moving around too much and help everything. So we've got subframes, we've got these new mounts, new shocks. This should ride like a new car. And so once I get all this back together, we will eventually tackle the damaged bodywork. I'm going to carry on now. In the next few weeks I'm going to tidy up that subframe area, clean all that surface rust and treat it with some rust preventative solution as a tide over until I go further into this car, because I've got plans with this car possibly in the coming years is pull the motor out and do a repaint and maybe even an engine rebuild one day. You never know. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I will see you next video. Alright, take care. Bye bye.